Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression.
And we're back for another episode of the Compression Podcast. Logan, how are things out in KC, brother?
Well, this week we have seen snow and we have seen a lot of sun. It was ridiculous. This is crazy. All right, so I woke up at 3:30 one day and I look out the window and it's just just snow is just coming down. And I'm like, man, this is really, really odd. And then later that afternoon, I was on the patio sunbathing in the same day. I took a little break, went out on the patio, got a suntan the same day that it was snowing. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking about how fast our worlds can change and how little control we actually have over what we can impact. And so, it's fun because, everybody knows I'm hot on green lights right now. That's all I'm talking about. And the art of living. Well, I took that scenario. I was like, yeah, it's cold outside. It's snowing. But, I can look at this like art. I'm going to enjoy this. I don't know how many other places it snows in April and is sunny and 55 in the afternoon. So I just was like, you know what? There's a higher power. He's got a lot of control going on in this world. And in my life, it's time to surrender a little bit more. So, that was what was going on in Kansas City this week. If you hear my voice, it's a little deeper than normal because I've got some congestion going on. The kids at daycare definitely have a lot of allergies or colds passing around, and I love up on my kids when they come home. So I picked that up, but I'm not letting it get me down. And so today's theme that I wanted to talk about is it's easy to operate at close to 100% when you feel 100%. But what do you do when you don't? What do you do when you don't? And that got me thinking about this, Jerome. I hear people, and I hear myself saying this quite often. It's like, oh, I'll do that when I feel better. I'll do that when I have more resources. I'll do that when I have less, craziness going in my life. Here's a public service announcement. Something will always come up. It's like I got home from the vacation. Okay, I'm going to get back in my routine and I'm going to rock this day and I'm going to rock this week and I'm going to rock this quarter. And what do you know? I get a cold and I can't breathe. I got the neti pot going in my nose. I got all of the stuff and my energy levels are low. So what do? I stay hard on disciplines and soft on schedules. But you cannot say, I will do X when Y, because Y is never going to happen. Something will always come up. And so I've had a nice little perspective shift this week with the weather, with that. It's like, what do you do when you don't feel 100%? And how? And remember on our last podcast, one of the guests, when we did our showing with Lawrence, one of the guests asked, what do you do when you don't feel motivated? And we're going to be covering that today, my man. We're going to be covering that a lot today. But we got a lot of big wins. This episode is going to be 24 mil.
Whoa, wait, let me do the math. That's
jump.
Like 3.8.
Yeah, 3.8 in the last couple of weeks. So we've closed 4 deals in the last 2 weeks, which we're very excited about. And we've got some big closings coming up right now as well. So that number is going to continue to skyrocket here pretty soon. So the compression is in full activity. It's in full compression mode right now, my man. So that's what we're covering today. That's the theme, 24 million. And I'm ready to dive into it, brother.
Wow. All right. So, let's talk about the wins. You give me 3.8. I want to go right there. We haven't really talked deals and
Yep.
growing the numbers. So we got to get to the 100 million. We're a little bit behind.
Yes, we
we're
are.
into the second quarter. We're a little bit behind right now.
Yeah. So there's always a little bit of a lull when it comes to the commercial real estate world and closings and what all of these closings. So I said we had 4 that closed. It was supposed to be 6, maybe even 7 or 8. So those just got pushed. I'm dealing with some other existential factors that I'm working through. Now, that being said, man, when consumer confidence starts to increase, when people have the perception that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, when they start to feel a little more confident in their wealth, let's call it, people start to transact. And that's exactly what we're starting to see. So the 1031 exchange buyers are starting to pick up. People are selling properties other places. They're looking for replacement properties. And, one thing I've always been harping on is, look, it's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have cycles when we're talking about these 1031 exchanges. But as the economy opens back up, as more people start to get vaccinated, people are going to start transacting again. And so that's exactly what we're seeing. Those are all brokerage deals, all 1031 exchange clients that don't live in Kansas City buying stuff in Kansas City. And I'm very excited about it. So we've got our next closing. We're closing on FTW is closing on a 48 unit apartment complex next week. And we got the appraisal back this week, created that margin of safety. You better believe it. The appraisal came back much higher than our purchase price, which is great. Off market deal. Jerome's always talking about off market. And so
you got to be off market, baby. I mean, so give us a percentage on that. What's the margin of safety on that? Between, a lot of people, they go in, they do these deals and they're like, is the appraisal going to make?
Yep.
Is the appraisal going to make? And the way we do deals is how much over contract price can we get this thing for?
Yeah, 8 to 10% on this bad boy, which is incredible.
That's not happening very frequently in this market, brother.
And so, one of the things that we're going to talk about today, one of the big wins, we'll just jump right back into it, is in our business, in every business, you have the people that are driving the business, where their focus or where their energy goes, their focus flows. Or maybe I said that backwards. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast. Where your focus goes, energy flows, whatever it is. You can say it both ways. But in our business, when all 3 of the principles are focused on acquisitions, guess what? We make acquisitions. And when we're focused on closing deals and raising capital, guess what? We raise capital and we close deals. But for every reaction that's in there, there's an opposite or greater reaction. And so, one of the things that we've been trying to solve for in our business is, okay, well, we need to solve for the acquisitions pipeline, meaning while we're going out and closing deals, raising capital, stabilizing assets, we also need the opportunity to continue to push on that pipeline. And so we went out and hired our acquisitions associate. And I'm proud to say, as of today, we have offers out on 1,000 units equaling close to $70 million worth of real estate. Now, just think about this. We're not going to get all those deals. We know that. We're not going to get half of those deals. We're not going to get a quarter of those deals. We're going to get probably 10 to 15% of those deals. But we would not have the same capacity. We wouldn't be able to hit our goals if we hadn't applied leverage through hiring our acquisitions associates. So we have underwritten, we have evaluated more deals in the last 2 weeks than we have the last 3 months. And so we're very stoked about, keeping that pipeline strong. Now, that also creates an opposite reaction of, hey, Logan, you got to go get $5, $6, $7 million worth of equity. And it's like, woo, I'm getting hot. I'm getting hot in here because of that, 700K to 1.5. Hey, I got that all day. Every single month I can put that. But whenever you put that stretch goal of $4, $5, $6, $7 million worth of equity needed, then you start thinking about bigger problems that you got to solve in your business. And so, but I'm really excited. That's a huge win for us, man, is seeing the stabilization process happening on a few assets. We're getting ready to sell 3 of them. And we're also getting ready to, hopefully go under contract for some large, sizable deals here that we wouldn't, have the capacity to mess with. So that's a huge win, is the operational piece that we were putting in place and the leverage that we were applying through people is starting to come to fruition.
All right. So the people are asking, how does one write offers so that they have 1,000 doors out there? Right. Like what type of goal do you set on a weekly basis in order to get to the place where you've got that many offers out? And how do you feel confident? Because I mean, you got to put the LOI out. It's not like you're sending out contracts to everybody,
Right.
but you're sending an LOI out. So what does that process look like? Because you can't just set a new person, bring a new person in and just set them free to go
Right.
do whatever and obligate the company to X, Y, or Z.
So the goal is, okay, everything that's coming to market, or every broker that we know is bringing things to market, and every property owner that we know that we've had a target property on, we got to get in front of. And so that's a lot of work. And so half of this work is let's look at what's being listed, what do the brokers have in their pockets that they might be bringing to market in 2 to 3 months, or the seller just said, hey, I'm open to selling, but I'm not really ready to list. And so that's exactly what happened. We had some serious inbound properties come to us. And then, a little insider tip here. Our acquisition strategy is twofold. Yes, we want to buy properties around our current properties. But the second one is identifying property owners, private equity funds, family offices that own multiple assets here in Kansas City. So knowing that side of the business, we went inside of our database. We figured out that there was a couple property owners that had listed a property. We got into what their other holdings were, and we realized that they had fund structure. And so we saw 2 or 3 other assets in a different fund that we said, hey, we'd like to make an offer on that. We said, hey, we'll make an offer on your listed property so as long as you give us the opportunity to make an offer on these other 2 properties in your fund. And they said,
got them.
Okay, great. And that's a different strategy, right? Because we understand those properties have been in that fund for 3-4 years. They're coming up on their 5-year exit plan. They're starting to look at, okay, well, what can we go get? So it's like, hey, the question becomes, how's it operated? Where are you at in your business plan? Where are the IRRs at? And a lot of these guys see great IRRs already, and they're ready to exit into something different to go lock in some long-term low debt right now. So just changing that narrative, understanding what they're going through to be able to actually add value. We're not just another brokerage company calling you to list your property. We're trying to think about a transformational exit strategy and then let you react to that. So that's kind of been the goal, is to think differently, to talk differently, and to solve problems instead of just saying, hey, let me get access to, X, Y, and Z property. And so many folks just say no to that. So that's been the goal on the acquisition strategy so far.
Okay. And so for the listeners, people who own property usually own something other than your target.
That's right.
And so you got to get in and you got to start asking the questions. And, the other thing that I encourage folks to do is say, hey, do you know anybody who's in the market to sell? Right. That's how you get the off-market deal flow. And if you're scared to have those conversations, or you feel like you can only ask or make offers on properties that are listed on LoopNet or Crexy, you're missing a boat, and you're never going to get anything that has any equity in it. And for the listeners, Logan said the brokers have some property in their pocket. No, it's not actually in their pocket. He can call somebody who would sell their property if.
Yep.
And you just need to know that, if you're not going direct to seller, somebody is.
Yep.
And there's opportunity for you to get access to those deals if you choose to go somewhere else. Okay. We're shifting gears because
all right,
we got the 1,000 doors. Where's next?
Okay. So you guys know my number one goal is to increase my faith, increase my my relationship with Jesus. And so for me, how do I do that? It's a very hard goal to set a SMART goal around. Well, I go to mentors and I say, okay, you got 8 kids, you have 3 successful businesses, you're investing 7 figures into deals, and you have a strong relationship in your faith. What are you doing? And so one of my mentors sat down and kept sending me these emails. And, us Catholics, we go sit in chapel and we do what's called Eucharistic adoration, where Jesus is on display and we're just sitting there and in his presence. And I just had continued to push this off. I'm like, nah, it's not for me. What am I going to do there for an hour? Like, what am I supposed to do? And so finally, after the 15th email he sent me, I accepted and I went this week. So I'm taking steps towards spending more quiet time. And I took a book with me and I took my planners with me, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So in the middle of the week, it's a perfect day. It's Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Every other Wednesday, I go and I sit in the chapel for an hour and just reset. And that was a huge win for me, to be open to everything and attached to nothing. So whatever your religious faith or not is, I'm not telling you, you need to be a Catholic or anything like that, or a Christian. All I'm saying is, find more time where you can connect to that inner spirit, to that feeling of being connected to what's going on around you. And it really helped me slow down, man. So that was a huge win for me. I accepted that challenge, and I have a long-term commitment to that. So that was a huge win.
Are you changing your morning process to do that more? Because I mean, it seems like you're lengthening that morning routine now.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a specific, time where I just take out from, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. after I drop the kids off at daycare, that I go over there. So my morning processes or my morning routine has not changed. It may change coming up because I am hot on Cameron Herold, and Cameron Herold wrote the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs with Hal Elrod and this vivid vision that we're going to talk about a little bit today. And so I'm going to reread that book, or I'm going to read that book. I've read Miracle Morning and see if I want to change up my morning routines. But this is just in addition to my top banner goal, which is to increase my faith.
And this is good because it's going to force the white space. And
That's right.
We've talked about that quite a bit, because you can go back to back to back to back and never actually get any thinking done. And
exactly.
Okay.
So I think that's gonna be awesome, man. And so that was a huge win. The other big win, not business related per se, was this. I have long been trying to find a productivity system, a model, a program. I've used Gtask. I've sent myself emails. I've used notes. I've used physical journals. Well, our business runs off of a productivity tool, project management tool called Monday. And Monday is an incredible resource. And so what I finally stopped doing was emailing myself, texting myself, writing a note here, putting it in my wallet. And I've forced myself to start utilizing the productivity system that we have put in place in our business, but in my personal life, using Monday. And I tell you what, man, when everything's going left and right and up and down, all I got to do is pull up that app and I see all of my tasks, the ones that are classified as red, which is due. They got due dates on them. I know exactly where. So all of this is to say, I get back into flow so much faster. And so I eliminate distractions. That was my first step. The second step is, okay, put the system together. And so I have a board. They call them boards. I have a board on Monday, which allows me to look at my top, priorities, my high value tasks. That's $1,000, $10,000 tasks, and to knock those out. And we also have implemented a top 3 for the week. So it's similar to the one thing. If you accomplish this one thing, it would make everything else easier or unnecessary. Well, in our business, we have our top 3 for the week. I know exactly what I'm working towards, and then my tasks roll up to those. So huge win. I'm feeling much more organized. I've got the app on my phone. Anytime I have a thought, an idea, a to-do, I just put it on the app. It's there on my desktop. I got it here at the office. I got it at the home office. I can get right back into flow. I know exactly what I need to be focused on, and I can turn off the external noise. And I tell you what, man, it is transforming the way that I am feeling about being productive and being able to mitigate kind of decision fatigue, which is huge in my business. So that's a huge win for me.
How are you getting it off of the to-do list to the calendar?
Okay, so the calendar I used to use as a to-do list, right?
Yeah.
And so I stopped doing that as well. And here's why, because my calendar would get so goofed up with all of this different stuff. I have other people looking at my calendar, needing to utilize that to be able to schedule time with me. So I basically said, look, on Wednesdays from 8 a.m. until 12 p.m., I have 4 hours to work on my task list. Tuesdays and Thursdays are calls. I'm on the phone all day long. Not all day, from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock. I'm on the phone Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm recording this podcast. I've got another podcast I record on Fridays, and I'm doing meetings from 2 o'clock until 4:30 at our new private club here in Kansas City. Mondays, I've got the executive board meeting, and I've got some other brokerage stuff that I'm working on. So basically use my calendar to batch different activities and using Monday to track all of those activities.
So basically you've got the window and you're taking your top priorities and putting it in.
That's
Now,
exactly right.
the thing that concerns me a little bit about that is eventually there's stuff at the bottom of the list that's never going to get done, but it's delegated to you, right? Because there's no allocation of the resource, which is the time to do the thing.
Sure.
So how are you managing the list to make sure that things, because everything's on that list is probably because somebody else needs it, not just because you wanted to make a pretty list, right?
Yeah, I'm not yet. I'm not to that point yet. Okay. But I have taken at least the if you want to go run, put your shoes on, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm 100% vulnerable and honest with all the listeners. I'm not there yet. There's things on that list I know need to get done, and I have no time to allocate towards them. Now, there is different classifications. It's I tried to implement the Eisenhower matrix on the task, so you can label a task, and you can create the label. So I labeled them: do, decide, delegate, or delete. And if a task is on there for 2 weeks, it keeps showing up, it's going to the delete folder, man. It's going to the delete folder. If somebody needed something 2 weeks ago and I haven't got it to them, it hasn't popped up and been more pressing, it wasn't pressing in the beginning. So that's my thought process around it right now, but I'm probably going to shift that as we continue to implement this productivity system.
We'll come back to it. That ain't gonna work. We'll come back to
baby steps, baby. Atomic habits, right? Atomic habits.
Yeah. What's next?
Okay. So the next thing is this, man. We've got a huge opportunity right now to capitalize on 2 or 3 major new capital connections. A very, very strong local group that helped take a separate group here in Kansas City from $100 million of assets under management to over $6 billion. Okay, that's
wait, say the numbers again.
They went from 100 million to 6 billion with this capital connection. And I'm not going to get too much into the details yet because it's very early on, but basically we have made a connection with a very premier financial planning service that allocates 20% of their clients' portfolios into alternative assets. I'm going to say that again. A financial planning service that allocates 20% of their clients' portfolio into alternative assets, meaning real estate. Now, there's not very many funds or financial planners out there that do that. Then secondly, you got to actually build a relationship with them. So this is a huge connection. We had the first intro call earlier this week. We've got the follow-up call coming up here very, very soon that I'm super stoked about. And that could really take our business to the next level. If I don't have to necessarily be focused on raising capital, I can go focus on the acquisition strategy even more. So that's a huge win. That was just one. There were 2 others that popped up, very similar. The theme is the same thing. Doors are being open. The question now is, which ones do we step through? And so new question, great problem to have, but we're starting to have to deal with different types of scenarios now. So that was a huge win to even be recognized by this firm, to even get the introduction, to get the call, to get the next meeting. All very, very big wins for our company.
Wow. Okay. Any follow on there? Like, what's the next step with your deal?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to do due diligence on us. And so,
sure.
Yeah, big process. So I have to sit down and craft the message, that we're going to share with them so they can take it to their investment committee next week. If that goes well, we then get the in-person and hopefully we start getting some deals in front of this group.
Okay. And Is there anything that you're concerned about with this not going through? Like, you see anything that's in the way that's got to be tightened up or cleaned up to improve the likelihood of success?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a ton. The main one being, they're going to want to really see how assets are performing, how operations are going, and our vision, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about on the learnings as well, is casting the vision. As I have continued to, and this is kind of an interesting perspective, but most of the podcasts, most of the books, most of the businesses that get scaled, sold, all of that stuff, they're all tech. Lots of them are tech, right?
Right.
And so that's a lot of the resources that I actually get access to, is hearing how these folks have done that. And so I'm taking Naval Ravikant's model, and Tim Ferriss, and all of these, Peter Thiel, and all these guys and Cameron Harold. I mean, he didn't do it in the tech business. He did it in 1-800-GOT-JUNK, but long story short is, how do you get people on board to what you are doing? You have to separate yourself from the rest. And the only way to do that is to be able to cast an extremely clear, compelling, and concise vision. And then you can back it up. So everybody knows that we use Entrepreneur Operating System from Traction, Gino Wickman's book. That's like the blueprints to the house. If you're building a house, you need the blueprints. You need the how. How are you going to build it? The vision is, what are you building? What are you building? Okay. And so what we have to do a better job of when we get into these conversations is, hey, we're not just another real estate firm doing deals. We're a real estate firm that does X, Y, and Z, and we're going to impact the community in these ways. And cast that vision to get them on board. So I think the big message, or the big, I guess, sticking point for us is, sure, we have our vision from Traction, but it's very concrete. We're gonna have $1 billion worth of assets under management in 10 years, and this is how we're gonna get to it. Sure, that's great. We probably go do that no matter what. But what's the vision that we're going to cast in a way that gets people on board? So that's the message that I'm trying to think through more right now, and actually do a lot of time. And that's a $10,000 task for me. I'm not sure I'm going to get that done, by Wednesday of next week. But before we have that first meeting, you better believe I'm going to have our team on board with a vivid vision that's able to be cast to these groups that get people on board with what we're doing.
I think it's probably good to go back to the Ikigai, right? And make sure that there's some confluence of all of one, the specific knowledge that you guys have, and then two, what you're uniquely qualified to do, right? Like, not qualified to do, but positioned to do.
That's right.
There's what we're good at and what we can do, because they're not always completely aligned.
Exactly.
But if you can show that you have something that nobody else can do, I think it's a win.
All right, man. So those are the wins. Rolling to the losses. Mentioned it before, but feeling sick, feeling tired, feeling sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, feeling unmotivated at times. I realized that, unmotivation is directly, tied to your energy levels. And so all it is, man, and this is one thing I think a lot of people like to debate on is, I can be successful and not healthy. I'm like, no, you can't. It's not sustainable. And they're like, yeah, I can. No, man, it's not sustainable. You're not going to be able to outwork, especially if you're in growth mode. If you're in growth mode, you cannot be unhealthy. And so, frankly, T challenged me. My wife challenged me. She said, hey, kind of seems like, the drinks are starting a little earlier in the day. Kind of seems like they are happening a little more often. And they have been, because of in-person meetings, events, all of these different things. And I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. I'm fine. I'm doing all right. When you pair alcohol, working out, with low sleep and high stress and 2 children, that is a perfect recipe for getting what I've got right now. And so this week I had no drinks until the in-laws were over last night, when T said, hey, let's have a drink together with my parents. I said, okay, fine. That's totally fine. So I think that the fix for my sick and tired of being sick and tired is just be real with yourself, man. Folks know I get obsessed with things. Well, when I get obsessed with something, I'm all in, and I like to do things, and I like to do it at 100%. If anything's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And I took that from an Army Ranger that I spoke with earlier this week, by the way. Young guy, forgot your name already, but shout out to you, Army Ranger, if you are listening. He said, man, if I'm going to do anything, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Well, to an extent, yeah. So not only did I, start to have drinks with folks at meetings, I started to be a mixologist,
Time to make some art.
Yeah, I got to make some art, man. Right? Like that's, but again, the theme in this is every action has an equal or greater reaction. And that I was reading Howard Marks' book earlier this week. He was talking about market cycles, macroeconomics. And, it got me thinking in my own life, like every action that you take has an opposite, equal or greater reaction. And so, I think that was my biggest loss was just feeling like I had low energy, and not feeling quote unquote motivated at certain times to continue to push through. And so that got me off my morning routine a few mornings. Like I mentioned before we started recording, the children have not been sleeping very well throughout the evening. So I've had a lot of midnight baby sessions. And so that's been tough on the sleeping as well. But all of that combined with the stress, the normal positive and negative stress in my life, created low energy levels this week. And it's just not something I'm willing to accept. Most people will be like, I'll get over it next week. I'll be fine. Not unless you change something, right? And so, you always point these things out, but you said, look, man, I mean, when you have all those things going on, you're susceptible to, getting sick. And that's the exact truth. So, that's the biggest loss this week is just not being 100% on my physical well-being. I think that I've really identified as a loss.
So you want to be a superhero dad. How do the nights go? Is it always you or you and T splitting it up? Like, how does it work? What's the strategy there?
It's always both of us, so I pick the kids up. I usually actually take the kids and, we get home and we eat dinner around 5:00, believe it or not. And so I know it's pretty early, but we eat dinner at 5. The kids are down by 7. And those 2 hours is a sprint, man. It's a sprint with T and I to get the kids baths done and get them to bed and all of that. And by 8:00, we're winding down and we're either reading a book together or she's got a show on and I'm reading a book. And so we split that up 100%.
But I'm talking about the nights, getting up in the middle of the night. How does that work?
Yeah. It's mostly T. Yeah. I mean, it's mostly T. She's a warrior, man. I mean, she takes it upon herself a lot to go in there, but it wakes me up every single time she gets up.
Of course.
The kids, rooms aren't too far from ours. You've seen our house. And so, I mean, we split it up a little bit. Like last night, she couldn't get, Isabella down. So I had to go over there and hold my baby and get her back to bed. And I did. But then Ezra woke up, and so Ezra came into the room because, he's coughing. So we try to prop him up a little bit. He wasn't having that. And T just looked at me. She said, why don't you go downstairs and sleep? So I went downstairs and slept and got my hours in. I feel great today. So I got a warrior as a wife that handles a lot of that stuff.
I'm just trying to figure out a way that you guys can maximize it. But, those ages are tough, man.
Yeah, it is.
Under two under 2 is tough.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think but what can I control in that scenario? I can control my eating. I can control my water intake. I can control the alcohol consumption. Those are all 3 things that I do have direct control over, and I will control all of those. So, that's a big one for me. So the win, I mean, is that I reduced the consumption this week, and I feel like I'm on the tail end of something that probably could have, hung around for 2 weeks or so.
One thing that we've learned through this process is vitamin D is essential. Vitamin D is essential for energy. And so if you're spending a ton of time with artificial light,
yep,
and you're not getting out for your walk in the sun, you're not taking in that vitamin D, your energy is going to be deficient. And it may be worth, if you haven't done your physical already this year, just getting the blood test done and seeing where all your different vitamins are sitting at, and see if you need
Yep.
to take a supplement.
That happens in August. So couldn't get into the doctor until August. He's a top doctor in Kansas City, Dr. Chris Stefano. And my wife has been pushing me hard to get that physical done, get all the blood work done. So that will happen in August. I also am going to see my chiropractor for the first time in a lot of years. But all these steps are taking a toll on my old hips and my knees and all that good stuff. And I've been weight training more. You know, I'm the healthiest I've been in a long time, but that's taken a little bit of a toll. So I've got a little bit of a lingering hip issue that I'm going to go get hopefully worked out as well. So, and again, that's Taylor, you know, pushing on me saying, hey, I need you around for a long time. You are the rock of this family. I don't want to do this life alone. So you got to take care of yourself. So I've always got accountability on that front.
When's the last time you changed those shoes and upgraded those shoes? Make sure
Every
you got
3
the
months,
right thing.
brother.
Okay.
Every 3 months. Yep.
Okay.
Got the fresh foam 1080Ps coming in hot from New Balance every month. If anybody needs a discount on New Balance, hit me up because Taylor is got an inside track on that. So let me know. Anyways, moving on, man. You know, this has been great. I want to talk about some of these learnings, and we've touched on a few of them, but you got to appreciate hard work, effort, and the art of life. And I'm just gonna harp on it one more time. But when I used to look at a painting, when I used to see something, a sculpture, I used to say, oh, that's cool. But take a minute and think about the effort, the planning, the work that went into creating that piece. And then figure out how you can think about your own life that way. And that's been a big learning for me over the last 7 days is anything that I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I can't craft it in a way that feels special to the other person that's receiving that. So any call, any presentation, any podcast, any of that, I'm going to be prepared and I'm going to try to do my best and create art in that scenario. And you got to appreciate hard work. So that was, and it's the little things. It's starting to appreciate the little things a little bit more. Vivid vision. This is something I heard on the Bigger Pockets podcast with Cameron Harold. And I highly recommend folks going to check that out. More to come on the Vivid Vision coming up here. A gentleman that you, Jerome, put me up on game on, which is Marshall Silver. And, you know, give him a chance. Okay. You know, there's going to be a feeling whenever you start listening to him that it's, I'm not going to say con artist, but he's a magician.
Hocus pocus.
But here's the thing. The dude is real. And he's been around as long as, if not before, Tony Robbins. He has not had the same limelight, but his story is incredible. The way that he thinks about life is incredible. And the way that he creates art is incredible. So he's a performer. He's a magician. He is an awesome individual that I'd love to meet at some point. But there's just been a few people that have had impact on me. Cameron Harold, Marshall Silver. And my number one takeaway from the Bigger Pockets podcast is this. When you're an entrepreneur, when you're building, you have to unlearn tenacity and start to learn leverage. And I loved that. I thought that was so cool because compression is all about doing more in less time. The only way that you're able to compress is to use leverage. We've talked about that in previous episodes. But you also have to unlearn tenacity. You cannot apply the same approach. Whatever got you here is not going to take you there. And you can't just work harder at it. Now, if you're early on in your career and you haven't done anything, work harder. I'm not telling you not to. It's always a piece of the puzzle, but you got to learn how to apply leverage in the right way. Here is one that I also heard when thinking about the vivid vision with your spouse. So me and T might be going through the vivid vision together, but you don't grow apart by starting to grow together. The only reason people grow apart is because they haven't tried to grow together. You don't grow apart by starting to grow together. The only reason that people grow apart is because they never tried to grow together. I thought that was beautiful. I thought that was so cool. And, At times in my life, this pops up because, look, you're a compressor if you're listening to this, or you're striving to be a compressor. Not everybody listens to podcasts. Not everybody reads books. Not everybody journals. Not everybody sets goals. But they're a compressor in their own right. And if you think about it, and if you read Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey never was this guy that set out to set, all of these strategic goals. He took what life gave him and he played those cards really well. But when you hear him talk, listen to some of his interviews, you'll hear the compression model, the strategy interwoven through his whole life. And so let me reapply this to my wife. My wife is not going to read personal and professional development books. She is not going to necessarily use a journal to set goals. She used to. And she's not going to think about things the same way. But the way that she has grown up, the lessons that have been implanted in her from her parents, who are entrepreneurs, exited a very successful company. Her dad hasn't worked since he was 40. All of those lessons are ingrained in her. She doesn't necessarily know how to verbalize them. And so for me, I have to take a very blended approach to growth because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have a model of success. I had a model of failure. Okay. Everybody knows on this call, if you don't, go back and listen to my dad's eulogy. The choices my father made led him to the grave that he's in right now. Okay. So I had to go strive to find this stuff. And when you are coming from that place, and when somebody else is coming from a place of, I already know all that stuff, it's just been different the way that I've learned it. And you try to force your inertia onto that person, it separates. It does not come together. And this is, 4 years of marriage that I've started to try to understand this. So the biggest thing that I'm trying to implement in my marriage right now is, how do I take everything that I'm learning, all the growth that I'm going through, package it up in a story? By the way, story is the best way to do it, that gets other people that are coming from a different place on board with that, especially the closest people around me. Believe it or not, most of the people around me do not do this stuff. They come from different backgrounds and they've implemented a lot of what I do. They're not as intentional about it, but they haven't had to be because of their upbringing. And you have to understand that different people have different approaches to life. Again, being open to everything and attached to nothing. So that was a huge light bulb moment for me this week, thinking about growth. When I heard that, it's like, well, okay. I used to try to grow with her the same way I was growing. I tried to force that on her. And that's not necessarily the right way to approach that. I'm still figuring this out, right? I'm still trying to understand how to best do this. But it was a huge learning for me. When I started to look at the closest people around me, I was like, my gosh, I'm the outlier. I'm the weirdo. I'm the guy that does all this stuff. And not everybody's going to, and that is okay. So
Logan,
anyways, man.
Less than 5% of people are going to do that part of it, right? And I might even go and say less than 1%. And that's why they are the 1%. I think the important thing is having the same, figuring out what the essence is, both of you. What's the essence of life that you're working for?
Yes.
And then you can move towards that. It's the overarching goal. How you get there, okay. But we want this. This is the vision of our future. And as long as you can get alignment on that vision, you'll grow together. But what I can tell you is if you're not moving towards the same place, then of course you're going to grow apart.
That's right.
Now, the trajectory, because you were talking about the distance that how long she wants you around, because it makes it more golf swing impact. If you're a few degrees off, you're out of alignment a few degrees, you can get apart from each other in a very big way.
Yes.
Before you notice it. And it seems like, oh yeah, it's okay. It's okay. And then you're like, I don't know you anymore. Right. And so just like but you guys have the date night. So it forces the reconnection. You're doing the mini vacations. We haven't talked about Colorado at all. We need to drop that in a little bit. So you're forcing in those touch points, but just make sure that that future state, that vision, even if she doesn't get excited about planning all the other stuff out along the way, that you guys have that same bigger vision, long range.
Yeah. And it all goes back to this. At the end of this hour-long podcast with Cameron Harold and the Bigger Pockets guys, he said, by the way, none of all this matters. None of this matters. And the Bigger Pockets guys were like, well, what do you mean? Please elaborate. And he's like, what matters is the people closest to you and how those relationships are. And it just dropped the mic, dude. I mean, went through an hour-long, how to grow your business and all of that, and then said, none of this matters. And so that's what I will leave you with today. My last learning, and we will touch on this more in the coming episodes, is you can implement all of the compressor mindset, being confident, omnipresent, magnitude and multitude, positive, patient, present, resilient, excellent, strong, stoic, all of this stuff. It matters none unless your personal life is where it needs to be. And I've started to really understand, no matter how good your professional life is, if you go home at night and you hate that, or you despise it, or it's anxiety filled, you will suffer in your professional life. And so this is a big thread that I think the rest of this year that we'll talk about is, unless that personal life, which, by the way, is your professional life. This is just life, okay? Everybody's always talking about balance. Hey, how do you balance professional and personal? I'm like, dude, there is no balance. It's a counterbalance. Like, what do you mean? There's no different buckets. But if you are an entrepreneur, a founder, somebody building something, your revenue, your profit determined by yourself. Your personal life has a direct correlation to your professional life. And I want to leave that with everybody, except for we have to go into our quote. And Jerome, maybe sometime we'll elevate the Compression Podcast to have little bells and whistles whenever we come in, and maybe some different, different segments like the quick tip on Bigger Pockets and all of that stuff. But that might be version 2.0, Compression 2.0, after we hit this $100 million. There you go. Never mind. He's already got it, man. Okay. So this is from a proverb way back when. It's a long time ago. There was a few scenarios in my week this week. And I thank God every day that I have studied emotional intelligence, because not everybody does. But in investor relations, especially around tax season, especially around when distributions are coming out, meaning a distribution, by the way, is money that I send to people every single quarter. A lot of it, by the way, from our deals. It can be very easy to get short-winded and a little bit impatient. So I read this back in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which we've never really talked about here. And it's sometimes accredited to the great Benjamin Franklin. But I think it goes back way longer than that, because he wrote that in Poor Richard's Almanac back in 1744. But I think he stole it from somebody else. And it basically goes like this. A spoonful of honey will catch more flies than a gallon of vinegar. So when you go out there, make sure that you're dishing out honey and no vinegar. Any closing thoughts, Jerome?
No, man, this is amazing.
All right, guys. Well, we're hitting 24 million right now. Wait till next week. There'll be more. There'll be more findings, learnings, wins, losses. Thank you so much for tuning in and making Compression Podcast what it is. Again, reach out to us if you have topics, questions, ideas that you want us to cover. Sometimes we go off the cuff and talk about green lights. Sometimes we're, on other people's meetup groups, talking about compression and that's actually what it is. But we wanted to get back to the regular programming. And if you have ideas, thoughts, comments, reach out to Jerome or I, LinkedIn, compressionpodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in again, guys.
Out.
Hey, compressors. If something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. Head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.